was relatively neglected album from the solo catalog, and it's George Harrison's "Somewhere in England," and I have in front of me the June-July 1981 issue of Beatle Fan Magazine, and we had in that issue three reviews of Somewhere in England. One by Bill King, who concludes this review by saying, "Listening to the Harrison of today, you may find it hard to believe that this is the same guitarist who once rocked out on such numbers as Roll Over Beethoven. But while his ties to rock now may be tenuous, Harrison proves on Somewhere in England that he still has a knack for putting together pleasing melodies and vocals." And there's another review by Sean Fulper Smith, who is a familiar name for people who were readers of Beatle Fan in the early days. And he says, despite the fact that Somewhere in England is pieced together from an abandoned project last year, it comes through as a cohesive set of songs that are both thought-provoking and musically superb. And then there's another review here. This one says, George Harrison did indeed give Warner's a more saleable product the second time around, but with this album's lyrical content, he creeps closer to becoming rock's ultimate BOF, boring old fart, and concludes, if you take the best moments from Harrison's last three albums, you have one great album. Unfortunately, when one releases an album only every 2 years or so, 4 or 5 good tracks just isn't enough. And those are the good parts of this review. Who the hell wrote this?
We're never going to have him on the show.
Who the? Oh, wait a minute. That was me.
Oh.
And you should have seen the mail. And in fact, in the next issue, for people who are lucky enough to have the two bound volumes of Beatle Fan's first 4 years, or who indeed have copies of those early years in the I guess it would be the August-September 81 issue, there are several letters that take issue with my review. So I think it's probably time to take a kind of a more mature look at this album. And Ken, why don't you give us a little background first of all?
Welcome back to another episode of I Know, a Solo Beatles video cast where we talk all things solo Beatles. Now, we have the fifth kind of co-host of Talk More Talk, and I'm glad that he's back. He is the author of many very great books, including Solid State, John Lennon 1980, and the forthcoming All Things Must Pass, and Assorted Love Songs, co-authored with Jason Krupa, and Fandom and the Beatles, co-edited with our good friend Kid O'Toole. Welcome, Ken.
Oh, thanks so much for having me on the show.
Oh, you are welcome. So even though this is a George Harrison centric episode, you do have to answer just one Paul McCartney related question because it is his birthday.
Well, naturally, yeah.
What is your favorite Paul McCartney record?
Wow, my favorite Paul McCartney record. That's good. It's Back to the Egg.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love that record. I love the energy on it. I remember vividly staying up way past my bedtime until midnight, secretly listening to it when it came out, and actually being angry because they were debuting 2 albums that night, and the other one was Candy-O by the Cars. And so I had to listen to the Cars to get to Back to the Egg. So I was actually staying up much later than I'd planned. but I've loved it since the moment I heard it, first heard it, and I think that guitar-oriented album is one of his best.
And what is your least favorite?
Ooh. My gosh, it would have to be something. Yeah, that's a tough question. Because it's changed. I think my least favorite is not, it maybe give my regards to Broad Street, because that was such a half-baked idea. I mean, No More Lonely Nights is a tremendous song, but
It is.
but that, you know, the goofy version of Long and Winding Roads, you didn't need to redo Silly Love Songs. I just found it problematic. And then the film was, you know, it's no Best Picture. So it had its limitations. So I think I fell that way. Which one's is your best and worst?
Best, I've got to go Ram, but Wildlife is a very close second.
I'm glad to hear that. There are some beautiful songs on that
Yeah.
record. Some People Never Know is one of my top songs of all time.
I will agree with that. And Venus and Mars is very up there too. And Back to the Egg, and McCartney 3, and Flaming Pie.
Yeah.
And my least favorite, I gotta go Pipes of Peace.
Yeah. You know, I was in love for a while with side one when I had the record, but side two is such a drop off from side one. And I know not everybody agrees with us, but I couldn't find anything to like on side two.
Except the Through Our Love song. That's the only thing that I like on side 2.
Not fair enough. Yeah.
So we've got an interesting topic today. This is probably the most controversial George Harrison album. Would you say that?
I would say that it certainly has as many adherents as it does very serious critics.
Yes. And so first of all, I want to go back to, what was your life like back in 1981? Where were you at when you first came to this
My
album?
gosh, I was in high school, and I was mourning when this album came out. I was still mourning the death of John Lennon. You know, things were pretty great except for that darkest day in Beatles history, which I remember vividly. Actually, I remember the next day vividly because I didn't hear about it until the next morning. But yeah, things were pretty good. And of course, like a Beatles fan, I bought this album as soon as it came out.
And what were your first impressions?
Well, my first impression was the single, because it had come out, I believe, in advance of the record. So I was well versed in all those years ago. In fact, I was kind of on the wrong side of loving it at that point, because it had received so much airplay because of obviously the connections with the murder. So my first impression of the record was that I enjoyed it. But it probably wasn't too different than my experience with some other solo records around that time, and certainly by 83 or so, where I felt like they were a little too artificial. I felt that way about Pipes of Peace to a certain extent, and certainly about this record. We were sort of on the wrong side of synthesizers. I felt like, you know, I felt like they were overused.
I will agree with that.
I was in a band myself, and while we too had a synthesizer, or two, I really felt like both in terms of the music that was reigning at the time, and on this album, it was a little overused.
I agree with it. My first impressions, I mean, I am only 14 years old, so you've had a lot more time to spend with this
And to
record.
rethink about it, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's as old as my dad, which is a little scary,
Yeah.
I think.
I bet your dad has aged better.
I
Tell
disagree.
him I said that. I mean that. I bet he has.
He is not a Beatles fan by any means, so I think that this album has aged better than I think it's aged better than it has, when it since it's came out, which I think of with a lot of Harrison albums. I mean, Brainwashed, I mean, that got kind of critiqued. I mean, Brainwashed is my favorite Harrison album, and I think that since I first heard it, it's really grown on me, and now it's a top 5 album of all time for me.
Sure, and I think I would agree about that record. And the one distinction for me when I went back and listened, of course, you don't talk to the I Know podcast without doing your homework, right? So I went back and listened to it a couple of times, and the difference with Brainwashed is I can hear the guitar of Any Road kicking in right in my head. I can conjure that up anytime I need. Whereas that guitar sound was really lacking on this record, on Somewhere in England. And I had also purchased the George Harrison album in 1979 when it came out, and that was a big record for me.
That's a masterpiece.
Yeah, I loved it. And in fact, I had discovered the Beatles when I was 11 in the late 70s, and that was one of the first solo albums I got after that moment of discovery, and I was quite pleased with it. Blow Away was on the radio a lot. A lot of wonderful songs like Love Comes to Everyone, etc. And I was really in love with that record. And 2 years later, I felt like this album was not in the same ballpark aesthetically as that one.
So I'm going to actually pull up the track listings because it was rejected from the record company. So
that's right. Warner Brothers took issue with it, which, by the way, is a great story, isn't it, Hudson? That here's George Harrison. He's just come off a critically and commercially successful, for the most part, record in 1979, and they took such a heavy hand with this. It's kind of strange when you think back about it, right? That it would be treated that way. That he would be treated that way.
Yes, and can you see the track listing PDF?
Sure can. Yeah.
Okay, so I did it right. So, we have Hong Kong Blues that opens it up. Writings on the Wall, Flying Hour, which is a co-write with Harrison and McRalph's. Leia's Head, Unconsciousness Rules, Sat Singing, Life Itself, Tears of the World, Baltimore Oriole, which is a Carmichael cover, and Save the World. And then for the version that we all know and I love now, we have Blood from a Clone, Unconscious Rules, Life Itself, All Those Years Ago, Baltimore Oriole, Teardrops, That Which I Have Lost, Writings on the Wall, Hong Kong Blues, and Save the World. So let's go to the original album first, and then we'll talk about the bonus songs after. So we open up with a storming song, Blood from a Clone. What are your thoughts on Blood from a Clone?
I like that song a lot. And of course, what's fun about it too is, we know that that's George poking fun at his record company for messing about with him on the rejection of, it's hard to imagine a Beatle being rejected. He would not be the only one, of course, but that an album was actually being rejected. So that's him, playing on the line, Blood from a Stone. I like the tune. The second time I played it today, I really felt like, for all of its great energy and tempo, etc., that it really suffered in terms of the synthesizers. They're overwhelming at times. And he would often, throughout this record, I'm sure you've noticed this too, he will double the guitar with the synthesizers. And I would say, to George's spirit, your guitar is one of the finest sounds the world has ever heard. And why would you water that down with, in some cases, a trio of synthesizers are competing with his electric guitar?
Yeah.
So, that's kind of my larger quibble with the record, but he's a great songwriter on this album. In fact, that's a wonderful track.
It's probably my favorite song on the album, and dare I say, it's a top 5 Harrison solo song for me.
Wow. Yeah, it doesn't get there for me, but that's you like funky Harrison.
Yeah, I do.
I like that phrase, because funky Harrison isn't really like our friend Kid O'Toole would describe funk, right? No, it's not hardcore, 70s funk. It's a different kind of sound, and it does depend on those synthesizers, sometimes saxophone, for him to create it. It's not necessarily a bad sound, but I like that you've coined that, because I think that is a term that describes that tonality he has at times.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting song lyrically. The only thing that I have to gripe with it, is I feel like he's trying to cram a lot of lyrics into it. Like, I mean, and he's trying to just go, he's like, it takes a man like Frank Zappa. It's like really fast. And I wish he would space them out and let everything breathe with the production. And I'm not sure. I mean, I don't have the remasters on like physical file. I just have the original LP, and I listened to the remaster just on YouTube, and it sounded a little more clearer. So that's just me.
Yeah, I hear that too. I don't know though that it, like I said, I don't know that it's aged well, simply because of the synthesizers, which were so in vogue. And it is kind of funny when you mentioned earlier, right? The album was rejected by Warner. He was really trying to give them something commercial. If you think about it, why else would you pile on those synthesizers? I mean, he's right there with the MTV age, or the soon to be MTV age.
Yeah, I mean, but that's a definite play for me. You gonna play or skip it?
Oh, I play it. Yeah, no, I
Okay,
play that one. I don't. I'm not going to edit that out of my master list.
Okay. I mean, it's on. If the Harrison estate was gonna drop and come to me and say, make a good Harrison compilation that we should release, this is on there.
Well, and frankly, if the Harrison estate is going to put together new releases, they should talk to the guy who said, Funky Harrison
Yeah,
Funk, whatever it is, they should be going to you.
And are you buying the Uber box just out of curiosity?
Yes, I am. I already have.
Can I move into it? Can I live in your Uber box?
I think you can, actually. Yeah, and you would have those 5 friends.
Yeah, I know.
Who would be with you, and my 3 cats. So you 5, pewter trolls or whatever they are. Well, 4 trolls and 1 Harrison.
How are the cats doing, by the way?
They're great. They were just here. Yeah, Dave was just here. My cats they're loving COVID. They like all this level of attention.
When's Dave coming out with his autobiography?
He writes it at night when we're asleep, and I'm hearing that it's going to be pretty controversial. He has to, and not about myself or my wife Janine. It's really going to be about the other cats. He has some issues.
So moving back to the record, Unconsciousness Rules. What are your thoughts on Unconsciousness Rules?
I like the idea. In fact, I enjoy the lyrics to this one, but as a track, in terms of the unity of sound and vision, I'd probably skip it.
It features George in I'm going to quote Eight Arms to Hold You. It features George in a rare R&B dance oriented mode, if that makes sense. It just feels like he's mocking people in it.
Oh, sure. And this is, I guess, isn't this sort of the same guy who sang Think for Yourself, right? He's mocking the insensate mind that doesn't think deeply about things. That's been his issue with the world at this point for 20 years.
Yeah, I mean,
really, since he was a kid.
I don't love this song, but I do enjoy it, and I play it.
Okay. Yeah, I'm a skipper on this one.
What would Dave think of that?
Well, I mean, we'll know when his book is published.
Yeah, I mean,
I've seen the working title is You're Gonna Get It. So I feel like it's going to be an aggressive book. Yeah. I mean, Dave, he's down the hall staring at me, wanting to know why his voice is being invoked. You know how cats are.
Yeah, cats are weird sometimes.
Yeah, they're in charge though.
Yeah, they rule the world.
Mm-hmm. It's better than consciousness ruling the world.
Maybe we'll have them save the world. Someone else might use it. So we'll move on to track 3, which is called Life Itself. Skip.
Is that a skip for you?
Yes,
So
it sounds like something that could have been on Extra Texture, and I despise that album.
yeah, so very good. Yeah, I I think I'm a skip. I don't think I'm as deep a skip as you are. He is laying it on rather thick there. And really the problem is that this could be sequencing too. Its location next to Unconsciousness Rules may not be so good, but it's a skip for me too.
Yeah, I mean, this is nowhere near my favorite Harrison albums. Like, let's just get that out of the way.
And well, that is, you said Brainwashed, right?
Yes. Probably goes Brainwashed, All Things Must Pass, Cloud 9, Material World 33 1/3, self-titled, then maybe this. But so now we move on to the very commercial single. Now I have some controversial feelings about this song.
Well, let's hear them.
So I get that it's a Beatles reunion, really. It's a Threedles reunion, but he took it from something that he was going to give to Ringo. Why couldn't he write his own tribute to John? Like, I just feel like that's a little bit rude. I mean, your former bandmate was shot and killed. Don't take a song that you already have written up. I mean, you're a brilliant songwriter. You could write something in 5 minutes that's probably more meaningful. I mean, it's happy, it's upbeat, but I don't like the context of it.
Yeah, that is a truly compelling argument, and it was a throwaway, a literal throwaway. And am I remembering correctly? It was going to be a throwaway for Ringo too. He didn't really, he wasn't fond of it.
Yeah, and then it was like, oh crap, John died, so got to put something out. I mean, because Here Today is a beautiful song, and that came from the heart, I think.
Yeah, this didn't feel that way. And you know, while we're on the critical side of this song, your observation a few minutes ago about him word cramming lyrics into lines, there are some of these that literally do not fit in the space of the vocals, the amount of real estate of music he has provided. Does that make sense? Yeah. I mean, in fact, my students this semester, last semester rather, in the spring, we had a Bruce Springsteen seminar, and one of their interesting critiques I hadn't thought of was that Bruce used to do that a lot, where he would have, 30 words where 10 would fit, that sort of thing especially in his early years. And this is a great example of what you were saying, where it's just too much. The sentiments are good. In fact, in a way, isn't his better commemoration the one on Cloud 9, When We Was Fab?
Yeah, I feel like that's
it's a much better song. First of all,
I love that song. I mean,
it's a great song.
Video is fun.
I mean, and it's kind of it's interesting. It's vague, right? It's not, you have to listen to it to try to understand what he's getting to. This one is almost too on the nose. Having said that, when I first heard it, when the single came out, I remember being comforted by it. The fact that that Paul and George were working together in some sense, and that they'd gotten together for what was a great cause. But of course, we didn't know the backstory in 1981 in the same way that we can know the backstory of everything almost instantly now, right? So yeah. But ultimately, it has too many synthesizers too for me. You
must really hate Press to Play.
You know what? I don't. There are some songs on there that I love because there is some guitar. My issue with George here is that's the problem. Press to Play has plenty of acoustic and electric oriented songs to balance out his love of synthesized sound on that record. it's the balance that I'm missing on this record. I wish we had more of that. I think it would survive better for me, and maybe Al would have liked it all those years ago
Yeah.
when he first heard it. Right, heck, they're just coming fast and furious now.
um,
You got to like the spirit of it, but I'm with you. He could have devoted some energy to writing a new song like Paul did and really knock it out of the park.
yeah, I mean, and it is the only Harrison McCartney collaboration that they ever did post Beatles,
Yeah.
which I would have loved to have Harrison play slide guitar on Hope of Deliverance. I don't know.
There are a lot of McCartney songs that would have really benefited from some good Harrison solos. Just his electric cadence would have been enough, or his backing vocals.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a whole other thing I'd like to examine is Harrison and McCartney's friendship kind of deteriorating over the years, because I feel like it doesn't get talked about a lot.
No. I wonder if that long-running lawsuit they have kind of put the final nail in that coffin, the one that wasn't settled, I think, until 1989, about the differences and what they were receiving in royalties. It was sort of along the lines of Paul buying up stock of Northern songs, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like, even in 2001, when Harrison was in LA working on Brainwashed, I mean, we all knew Harrison. I mean, I wasn't around, but you guys all knew Harrison was dying. Wouldn't you?
Oh yeah, it was.
Make
there
an
was no
effort
surprise. Yeah,
collaborate with him. I mean, seriously. I mean, but I won't criticize Paul anymore because it is his birthday.
That's right. Happy birthday, Paul. He's
Paul,
79 years young, right?
You can email me and we'll work something out.
Yeah, I mean, if you could come up with Harrison Funk, then you've got something for Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's probably a skip for all those years ago.
I didn't skip it in my two plays today, so I understand your skip, but I don't know. It still has the ability to touch me now in a way that maybe has been reclaimed, because after it was played a lot on the radio back in 81, I did get to the point where I was having all those years ago fatigue. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember thanks to our friends at Wikipedia, I was reminded that the song that kept it from being number one was one that just drove me crazy. Betty Davis, Eyes. Have you played this thing?
I hate that song.
Yeah, me too. And it was in, the heavy rotation that the number two song has, of course, is impressive, but that thing was everywhere. So it kind of got me out of top 40 radio for a while.
Yeah, and I honestly prefer the live version on Live in Japan. I think that's better.
I agree.
I mean, I love that album to death. Live in Japan is a very underrated album, I feel, but that's a whole other episode. And we won't get into how nerdy I can get about that album. But let's move on to the first Hoagie Carmichael cover, Baltimore Oreo.
I personally, I love the fact that George Harrison was clearly going through his own kind of love affair musically with Hoagie Carmichael, and with jazz standards during this period. I think that's pretty cool. But you know what I wish? I wish he'd gone whole hog like Carly Simon did a couple of years earlier with her Torch album. Just do the songs, go in and the style, ditch the synthesizers, and just go into the jazz world, because his voice is wonderful.
Yeah.
In fact, by Harrison's own admission, he say at one point that he was a better singer after the Beatles, and he does have good voice control at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think his voice kind of went after Cloud 9.
Yeah. Well, and we also know that he had a cancer, right? But
even like the Traveling Wilburys Volume 3, his voice was gone. If you really listen closely, he got like Bob Dylan disease and got all nasally.
Although let's give him some credit on your favorite George Harrison album. Again, the song Any Road. I
Yeah.
think he really sounds more like his Scouser origins with that one, and with The Devil in the Deep Blue Sea.
Oh my God, I could listen to that song all day.
It's one of the great versions of that song. It is the best version of that song, and he has very nice vocal control on that. It probably took him a lot of work, particularly knowing what we know now about those last several years.
Yeah, yeah. Because now I think back and yeah, the vocals on Brainwash were really good. But I mean, those songs were recorded over a period of time, which is interesting. Because I think Devil in the Deep Blue Sea was recorded in 93, I believe.
Yeah, it was an older tune for sure.
Yeah, because I mean, Any Road had origins during the Handle with Care sessions, I think.
Well, there you go. So you clearly have a better handle on Harrisoniana than I do.
So let's flip it over to side 2. Now we go to a really fun song, I think. Teardrops.
Well, I mean, and teardrops are just fun in life, right? No,
Yeah.
I like that one too. And actually, this is an example, and there are several on this record where I actually prefer the demo, which I think you can hear on YouTube.
Yeah, I like that demo too.
Yeah, it's good stuff. And his kudos to the Harrison estate for publishing the demos, at least several of them previously. I hope they do that more often, because his demos are some of the best. His demos for Some of All Things Must Pass are as good as the album.
Yeah, I mean, I'll send you some MP3s of what I have, but I have like All Things Must Pass naked bootlegged, and the Wah Wah is just crazy. I mean,
now I didn't ask you, are you getting the gnomes?
I don't think my parents would like that. I mean, I think I would be living in the Uber crate if I did
I see.
that.
Okay.
But believe me, if I had the money, I would be getting the gnomes. So I can't. So that makes me not be able to pick fun at your co-host named Tom Hunyadi, who ordered it the second I sent him the thing.
Yeah. Now, see, that's the thing, though. So Tom, I'm very different from Tom in the sense that he is a true record collector, right?
Yeah.
Like folks like Bruce Spicer, these guys, they're hardcore collectors. I'm not a hardcore collector. And that was actually my justification. I thought, you know what? You didn't buy all 4,000 versions of McCartney 3, or truthfully, any version of McCartney 3. So surely you can get the gnomes for yourself.
Yeah.
I said, self, get the gnomes.
Now they're gonna have to sit in your garden if you have a garden.
Yeah, we do, but I feel like those are indoor gnomes, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that's just scaring me is George is just smiling at us behind me. I mean, that's just
right.
Scary.
Actually, a good book cover for Dave would be to have Dave in place of George and the 4 gnomes. I'm going to suggest that.
Yeah, I mean, with a foreword from Gertie, I mean, yeah,
well,
perfect.
Who is no longer with us.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear.
Yeah, we didn't. COVID's been so tough on a lot of people, and she died in December, and we were going to write up a whole thing, especially after she had so many fans all year, right? Who were following her exploits. And she was 20, and Gertie McDowell is no longer with us. I'm either Dave will dedicate his book to Gertie, or it will be like a full-throated attack on Gertie. They were, they could be friendly, but they were foes at times.
Yes, but love Teardrops.
Yeah. Now, so you keep Teardrops. You don't skip that one.
Oh, I love that song.
Okay, just checking.
This is a top 20 Harrison song. So, now we go to the song, That Which I Have Lost, which this is another funky Harrison song.
There it is.
it it's just weird in a way. It sounds like something that could have been on a Bob Dylan album.
Is it a keeper for you?
I think so.
Yeah, I'm regrettably a skip on this one, although I do like the tempo. I like that it has some speed to it.
Yeah, beginning guitar lick is just really fun.
That is true.
Playful. It I mean, it does actually in Eight Arms, it does say a country tinged track composed on George's 37th birthday. It does refer to the Bob Dylan's Born Again phase.
Oh, that's true.
I'm a big Bob Dylan fan. I don't know about you, but that's like my whole other thing.
And by the way, that's one of the great books, Chip's book, Madinger and Easter. I think Madinger and Easter. That's such a fantastic book on the solo years. It changed my view of the whole period because it put it all in a kind of shared context that I simply didn't have before.
Now the question is, do you have the original?
I don't. Do you?
No, it lives in a PDF.
Yeah, mine too. But that's okay. We're just fortunate to have it. I'm glad it's in the world.
I'm not selling half of my brain to get an original. Because I mean, yeah, it's either that or the gnomes. I got to sell my brain.
Right. And Chip is wonderful, but gnomes.
Yeah.
Now, if there were gnomes that came with 8 arms to hold you, that's a tough call.
Gnomes to hold you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So enough gnome sense.
There's another one. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess we should move on to writings on the wall.
Yes.
Lyrically, I think it could be another reference to John's death.
I read it that way too. And let me ask you, right, since you brought this up a bit, do you think this is superior to all those years ago?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, this shows what can happen when you write, about their interest, their shared interest for a time in meditation, and it's a superior track.
Yeah, I mean, I love you, Ringo, but George liked to write throwaways for you.
You gotta love,
especially in the 80s.
Yeah, you gotta love the fact that John did have a special place, for the most part, for Ringo and certainly for George at times. I was talking to May Pang about that, and she said he really looked out for them. He was concerned that they were slipping. Obviously, there was an issue at the end of John's life involving Harrison and his book, but this is the superior song as far as commemorating that terrible loss.
Yeah, I think this is a definite play, and it's a highlight. Musically, I enjoy it. It is kind of slow and sad. It seems like something Lennon would have written.
Yeah. Yeah, even during that period.
Yeah, it really does. Sounds like a Relistens song.
Well played.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, are you a play or a skip?
I'm a play for that one. Yeah. You?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, you sound like that's a win.
Yeah.
And I'm following along with my own list here to make sure I'm right with you on the I'm not doing email or anything.
Okay. Now go to track 9, Hong Kong Blues. What are your thoughts on Hong Kong?
This to me is a play. I like I like his interest in Carmichael. I find that very engaging. I enjoy it. So for me, it's a play. In fact, I think I like this slightly better than Baltimore Oriole. as it were.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
It's a definite play. Musically, it's interesting. I like his own spin on it, but I wish Harrison did like a jazz standards album.
It would have been quite a record for him, right?
Yeah, I think
likely
better than Kisses on the Bottom. I'm not a big fan of that album.
It has a couple that I enjoy.
I will
but
agree.
yeah, I don't, you know, honestly, the bonus track, we didn't need to remake Baby's Request.
Isn't that like your favorite Wings song? If I
It-
remember to talk more talk.
I love it a lot. There's no doubt about it. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no, don't pull a Ringo and remake a song, Paul. Don't.
Yeah, that's right.
We don't need 600 versions of Baby's Request or Back Off Boogaloo.
No.
Oh, ugh. I could save myself from going deaf for hearing that.
Great drum opening though.
True. So I do enjoy Hong Kong Blues.
It's a
Now-
definite play.
Yeah. Now to save the world. Lyrically, this is just great. I mean, save the world. Someone else might use it. That is relevant today. I mean,
Absolutely. And it's a play for me.
it is too.
But I think the demo is considerably superior. I think the demo could have been placed on the album and it would have been good to go. It is a great, great performance from him.
Yeah, I mean, save the world. I mean, it's relevant today. It was relevant 40 years ago. I mean,
In many ways, he was slightly ahead of the eco curve. I mean, obviously there were conservationists at work and people thinking about the earth. But yeah, it's him being very prophetic.
and I think that if he had lived, I mean, into the we'll just say the last few years with a president who we shall not name.
I won't name it.
Okay.
No, I agree with
think-
you. It's a shame we lost his voice. I know people spend a lot of time talking about the loss of John's voice, but you know, George
Politically.
really should still be with us. I mean, so should John, obviously, but so
Yeah. I think that if he had lived, and same with John, I think they would have done a lot of political work.
oh, for
together.
sure, for sure.
I mean, I could really see Harrison being like a big facing the climate change as much as Paul.
Mhm,
Which
for sure.
So overall, where would you rank this in his canon?
It's you know, it's not a big canon, right? In a lot of ways, when you talk about his solo career, and maybe we just think that because of the overwhelming nature of like Paul's, where you have so much material, but it's in the bottom third for me. You know, I respect your feelings about it, but it's not a go-to album for me. Neither's Gone Troppo. You know, but
Superior to Gon Troppo.
oh yeah, absolutely. No, I would agree with that. It just has not aged well for me with just that huge wall of not sound, but synthesizers that exist there, and just it almost makes it sound too sweet and cuddly when it needs to be. When he had, you know, some of the great edgy guitar of all time.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about a man who was in the Beatles. This is, I will say, Gon Tropos' worst album, maybe followed by Dark Horse. This is in that seventh or eighth, interchangeable with Extra Texture.
Yeah.
It's an enjoyable album, and if I had to pick 3 in a row that were somewhat good, I would go 33 1/3, this album, and I mean self-titled in this album. If I had to pick 3.
Well,
that
let
were
me
good
put
in
it
a
this
row.
way. I bought the album when it came out and I still have it. It's never been, it never went to the used store or anything like that.
Not like Thriving Pain, I'm guessing. I actually like that record. So
Yeah, I'm not a fan of that one. In fact, that's probably the record by Paul I dislike the most.
oh, well, guess what? There's a 20th anniversary coming up, so you might have to be back.
I would, anytime you like, I'd be glad to spar over that record.
I'm gonna have you and Kit and then Ken Michaels, and we'll all be in a fist fight virtually.
There you go. Yeah, Kit and I will be on one side, sort of being honest about things, and then there'll be Ken fighting for every
Ken
last
and
note.
me.
Yeah.
But I want to turn the show over to you. What would you like to plug?
Well, I'm very proud, speaking of All Things Must Pass, with my new book, All Things Must Pass Away, with Jason Krupa. He and I are looking forward to sharing it with the world. It was going to be the first Beatles book, perhaps ever, but certainly in years, and informed by Phil Spector. I had corresponded with him, but before his death, obviously. Now it would be sort of a seance. But I had corresponded with him, but all he wanted to talk about was that he was innocent. And, which is, hey, that's, freedom of speech, all of that. But I was really asking questions about, tell me about Let It Down or, Wah Wah or something. So almost.
But yeah. And do you want to tell us about everything Fab Four and Talk More Talk?
Well, as you said, I'm sort of a rotating member on Talk More Talk, but things have been going really well with everything Fab Four. We've got a lot of regular listeners and had a lot of fun guests. In fact, this weekend. I'm going to edit K-Flay, who I like very, very much. I'm a big fan of hers, and she is a huge Beatles fan, which says even more about her. But she's if the folks out there don't know her, try Blood in the Cut. What a tune. Or her new song, which is fantastic too. But yeah, that's what I'm plugging.
Yeah, sometime you'll have to be interviewed for everything Fab Four. We'll have to. Yeah, I mean, we got to have you as a guest on your own show.
There you go. Actually, you should be a guest, and you can talk about Funky Harrison, et cetera, et cetera.
I would be happy to.
You qualify, that's for sure.
So, as for me, you can reach me at iknowiknowpodcast@gmail.com. Please subscribe to our YouTube page. We're almost to 100, and we're getting close to our 50th episode, which is big. Because I've only been doing this for, 7 months, even though it doesn't even feel that long.
Well, congratulations. It's I've heard just nothing but accolades about your work.
Thank you. So, you can catch my next episode, which will be with Gary Van Soyak. Funny thing is, his wife, her first cousin, lives 5 minutes from me. I found that out today. I wake up to a message and I'm like, who's this? She's like, oh, you asked to interview my cousin's husband. And I was like, who's your cousin? She's like, Eva. And I'm like, oh, wow.
But does everything have to go through her?
I don't know.
Yeah. Good luck with that.
Yeah, but take care, everybody.